Hi, welcome to Expanding Consciousness with Gina, and I am thrilled to welcome my guest today, Peter Maxwell Slattery. Hi, Pete.
Gina, thank you for having me. It's good to do this.
You're an international best-selling author. You're a spiritual advisor and educator on UFOs and UAPs, the paranormal, extraterrestrial, and non-human intelligences, and ascension and human potentiality. That is a huge amount that you do. In addition to that, you're the founder of the Jaya Sanctuary, which just sounds incredible. And that sounds like a place dedicated to self-mastery. You do yoga and also bring people there to experience contact with extraterrestrials. Wow, how do you fit it all in? And do you want to tell us a little bit about that journey, like how you first started actually having contact with extraterrestrials to going right to that point of actually opening up your own sanctuary for people?
Yeah, so I'll do that in like a thumbnail sketch
Yep.
because it started when I was young. And let's say 13 books of material, it's just a lot to sort of compress and pack down. But I started having experiences telepathically around seven. There's a handful of things that happened before that. There's more and more that comes to light, but they're sort of, we could say, vague to an extent. And then there was a period between 8 and 12 where I was living with my mother and stepfather in this home that they built. And there was regular contact occurring with what would be described as greys, but they're white. And I later found out that they were light beings or are light beings. But at that time, it wasn't, I didn't know what they were. I didn't even think extraterrestrial or anything like that. Even with movies and things, it was just that was my come from. I just didn't know what these things were. And then I had my first sighting at 12 years old uh, in my hometown of Albury, or actually Lavington, which is a suburb of that. And that was a huge disc, about three times the size of a football field. It was more like a weight, not like two saucers put together. It was more like a weight on the end of a weight bar at the gym. And that just went in front of this hill called Red Light Hill until out of view. And I didn't speak about it till later years with another family member that was having some sightings as well. And from that point, I just had a lot of what would term high strangeness occurrences, seeing people that others weren't seeing, not knowing that I was psychic, which I think a lot of people, I think we've all got those abilities, but not understanding it because it's not spoken about. And that's part of why I focus on a lot of the things that I do now for education, because we need more education in these areas. So life just went on. Around 2004, I had another amazing sighting, and then around 2010, I had a spate of sightings that ended up getting me on the news. And I was contacting the Australian Air Services. There was no explanation for what I was experiencing and filming, as well with witnesses. So things sort of got a bit more hectic later on in terms of blue orbs appearing in visitations that was completely different than what I was experiencing as a child. Totally different ballpark, but these beings came into the picture later on that was back then as well. And I forgot to mention at seven, the telepathic communication was from a female that later introduced herself years later, and I connected the dots at a later stage. Going into the sanctuary, which is why this is a preface for that as well as the contacts, was it was around 2010 timeframe, give or take, that I started having these visions of a big tree, a T section of farm fencing, and a mound. So, long story short, the contacts have continued. I was married for a short period, and I was in Melbourne for a while. I traveled the world, and then the event happened around 2020, and I was stuck in a cabin that I obtained at the bottom of Mount Buffalo, which I'd been doing workshops and visiting pretty much nearly all holidays since a child. And I pretty much every day for an entire year, whether it was online looking for a home to purchase, get it, I had a down payment, what have you, or talking to real estate, I was searching for pretty much a year straight. And then all of a sudden, this place came on the market, and I was like, I got to check that out. Now, I got to say, James Gilliland, who's got the famous ECD Ranch in the States, he said, had you tried looking with the pendulum? And I said, I did that, but it's in an area that there's nothing there. So when this place came on the market, it was exactly where the pendulum was. And I went and checked it out, and there was other people here, and apparently I found out later they're like, this guy's going to get this place. But I walked straight out on the property, barefoot to the middle of it, and I got smashed with energy. It
Mm-hmm.
just went through me. And I was like, this is it. So, through certain circumstances, I ended up putting a portal, a stone portal where that event took place, as well as there's a pyramid to the right of it, and to the left there's an obelisk to source. And what I realized was that down the back left-hand side of the property is the mound, the T section of fence, and the big tree. But where this gets even crazier is that on one side of me there's 100 acres, and you can only build on 2 acres there because it's on a government conservation project. And on the other side there's a triangle section of trees. Well, it dawned on me I actually planted all those plants 20 years ago when I worked for the government doing government conservation work.
Oh, no way. That's amazing.
Yeah. So this was sort of pre-planned. Now, going back to this as well, I wasn't aware of James Gilliland and what he was doing. And even Greer had been the Jameses years beforehand doing similar stuff, CE5, because James has been doing CE5 since late 70s, early 80s. I was aware of just Greer through the Disclosure Project, but I was already taking people out. I called it IC, initiating contact. I didn't know that other people were sort of doing it. I actually had a gentleman 2 or 3 days ago contact me who was doing their version of CE5 in South America in the mid 70s.
Oh,
And they
wow.
were actually like doing it in a process where it was documented in a scientific method. So, yeah, that's sort of I know I've rambled on there, but it's just to really condense it down because there is so much to this.
Yeah, that's right. That's amazing. I love how you had that like precognition about the land and Jaya Sanctuary. That just sounds obviously meant to be. It's interesting about your childhood, obviously getting messages through your childhood and how it's all eventuated now into Jaya Sanctuary. I'd like to just tap into a little bit because I know that prior to you being an ET experiencer and going into that kind of career, you're a musician, like a rapper, and a successful one at that. And when I've observed the energy of musicians, they seem to be natural channelers anyway, regardless of whether they say that or not, or identify themselves as channelers, because there seems to be within the creative flow an access to something beyond themselves, where sometimes it's almost like they just get a download of lyrics or words or music or sounds, and then they bring that forth and people just love it. It's like it's a channeled piece of music that's meant for the masses to hear. Do you feel that that is really similar in its process to the ET contact work that you do, or do you think they're quite different?
There is the similarities and the overlap. Even if you go into scientists, like apparently Nikola Tesla would wake up and every day there would be something in his handwriting on the side of the bed, and other scientists saying similar things. And there is the process too that the mind and frequency that you're on and intention will be frequency specific for what comes through, meaning if it's negative, it's going to be negative. If it's positive, it will be positive stuff. Where I could be very frustrating with my music because back then, and I don't listen to it anymore. All I do now is play guitar. I got electric guitar recently and I've picked that up again. I was mainly out of anything, I'd probably be more a drummer than anything. I was in a lot of bands as a drummer doing heavy metal to grunge and rock sort of stuff as well. That's my main thing, which most people were unaware of. But with even the lyrical, because I'll do the bass, the guitar, the piano, drum, I'll do everything. And so if you've got that energy, which is sort of like very negative, again, as I was saying, you'll get that. But my stuff back then, it was sort of, we could say street stuff, of course, because that's sort of what I grew up amongst that, even though my dad was a well-known police officer. I was in the streets a lot because it's sort of just where life led me in human conditioning. I later understood whether it was around gangs or different types of people. But my music, really, at the core of it, was about my frustration with humanity, with how we treat each other.
Mm.
Because what led me down those paths was how I was being treated. Because in some cases, I was white, I was overweight, and my dad was a police officer. And everyone would think, oh, that'd be sweet. But it was something that was, we could say, a focal point for a lot to pick on, not realizing that I was taught martial arts since a young child, doing some of it blindfolded. to when later on I was fed up, we could say, if I put it politely, that basically entering high school, everyone found out not to mess with me, but it was because of the frustration. And so back then, it was really a thing in later years with self mastery, learning to channel my energy where I wanted it to go. And this is the same going with music. It's all about where you channel that energy. And I think there's some cases that people with a lot of trauma, and I went through sexual abuse as a child as well. Some people, they say it opens them up for a huge trauma. Now, we could say that on a large basis, maybe, but I've worked with thousands of people now. And what I can tell you is there's some cases that there is no sign of trauma whatsoever, and they're amazing channelers or they're having amazing experiences, which goes to show, as most researchers would know, when you think you've got it or you understand it, something comes in to throw that out. Now, it doesn't mean that you could say 80, 90% of people are traumatized and that's opened them up for experiences, but it's how we can overcome those things, which to me is self-mastery, which is really what I was delving into after the music, going into that, and then I was getting known for paranormal investigations, hauntings, assisting people in clearing, and then from that, the ET contact mixed with that was just a natural thing that I think was there the entire time. It's just I was trying to shut it down a majority of the time.
That's really fascinating. I'm going to like rewind even further then back into your life, because at the moment we've got a slight resurgence. It's not like hugely popular, but I believe it's getting more popular, a resurgence in mind sight, or learning how to see blindfolded. And you mentioned that you did martial arts even blindfolded. So I'm wondering if your martial arts training, which we know is phenomenal, it's almost like a city in itself, it's a phenomenal thing to sort of master, because it helps you master your emotions and your physical strength and also your intuition. But doing it blindfolded, do you think even back then you developed some sensory, like heightened sensory ability that has also helped with your ET contact?
I think it's just something that you could say it's a synchronicity. It's something that I'm saying, like, to me, is something that's a coincidence. I know that there's things beyond a coincidence, and I'll give an example with this and I'll clarify. So, what it was I was doing Goju Kai and Goju Ryu. My dad's actually a teacher, or was a teacher in that as well. And been doing it for many years, I think longer than what I've been alive. I didn't end up going that far through it, but I've been doing my katas nearly like 5 days a week for, geez, over 20 years, 25, 30 years, maybe something like that. It's just part of my life. But it was because I was that wild at one time that they're like, we can't teach you, because I was building people up double my age. I don't want to brag. It was just, that's the type of stuff that was happening. And it was because eventually that I'd snapped back then with being picked on. So if anyone was a bully to me, I wasn't picking up with it, dealing with it or anything like that. But part of the byproduct as a child, what was happening was we would put a blindfold on and do martial arts, or we'll try and find other people in the dojo. Now, that was a regular thing, that it wasn't part of it, but one of the teachers that was working with my father, and then we had a sensei, of course, was basically bringing it in as a regular thing that was done every now and then. To add to that, there's a game, I don't know exactly if this is what it's called, but with my brother and stepbrother and stepsister, we used to play a game called Blind Man's Bluff. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. I don't remember how it goes though, so
Well,
explain. Yeah.
this is where I look back and connect dots even more. So what it is one person's blindfolded and everyone else goes and hides in the house wherever they can. It can be in cupboards, kitchen cupboards, under couches. And this we would play, I couldn't tell you, like it could be a few times a week, a few times a month, but it was regularly being played as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unbeknownst, like thinking about, I didn't connect any of this really until when I was writing one of my recent books and moving in here. But my practices over the last 15 years, intense practices, about 7.5, 8 years now, it's been 8 to 12 hours a day remote viewing and meditating, split up into two sections. And I don't do as much now. I do my practices, but part of my practices is blindfolding and earplugging myself.
Okay.
All right. So when I do that, the way I equate this with enhancing the senses is somebody that's blind, they got great hearing and great taste. Just as an example. So what happens is it dulls down the senses to a point that really, if you go into a state of observation, with purely in the first place setting the intention that what you need to experience to be a better person, be of service, and bring love in your life, like you can't do this, you've got to do this, but you've got to clear the space also before you do something like that. And there's times that I could be in that state for 4 hours, not wanting to. It's just what would occur.
Mhm.
So it is something where I look back now, the amount of time that I'll do the practices blindfolded and earplugged, of course, enhances those things. So I think it's sort of a catch-22 that I was already having the experiences, having contact, but I naturally was going into practices with that in mind of blindfolding and earplugging, let alone as a kid. Maybe that did amplify and open something up unbeknownst, just coincidentally.
That's really, really interesting. And I wonder if it plays a part in reducing the fear. Because as you're saying and talking about that sensory deprivation, blindfolding, earplugs, things like that, even sometimes just that can create anxiety within someone when they're new at that practice, like, oh my gosh, I can't see or hear, and it can feel a little scary for people. So I almost imagine that that's one way of reducing or releasing the fear around those sorts of things and making contact. Often in the initiating contact and CE5 circles, we often talk about, the importance of releasing your fear in making contact, because the fear alone can kind of, create resistance, and then, maybe contact won't happen. So do you want to delve into that a little bit about, like, it sounds like you've gone through a childhood and an adulthood where you've constantly kind of faced your fears, built up strength, and released your fears, whether it's through martial arts, facing bullies, going through sensory deprivation, and you have the most amazing contact. So I'm wondering, like, what you've done to kind of get to that really strong inner strength that you have, and that strong light body, and by the sounds of it, not much fear in there, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I use any fear that does arise as something to observe, and then it intrigues me to push through that and the why. As an example, there's a well-known asylum near here, and I would go there for an investigation. And what was happening in a section there was a lot of shadow man activity. So I said, just leave me here alone. They're like, alone? You sure? And I'm like, I've got no issues. This intrigues me, watching a shadow man teleport from one end of the hallway, which I feel there wasn't more than one, it was teleporting from one end to the other. But in order to experience these things, it's something where you have to pull that fear out and go into the observer state, because with trickster intelligences as an example, most people are unaware, but just through the amount that I've experienced, you'll find that if you respond in a positive way, you'll get a positive experience. You respond negatively, you get a negative experience, but it'll be nonsensical.
Mhm.
So purely going into the observer state's a safe place to be within you when you are either assisting people or experiencing it yourself. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't get taken aback with the experiences, but going to your point where there's some fear for people, what's great about what I've been doing for many years and this sanctuary is that I tend to find a couple of aspects with this, which is I have experiences come and hang out, and they have experiences with other people, and it's new for them because they're always by themselves. And then people that haven't had an experience, or maybe a sighting, just something that wasn't too hardcore, they're now in a group. And what happens is they surrender and let go to a certain point that they have a breakthrough or an amazing sighting or a manifestation of an orb, a being, or what have you. And they needed that so they can go back by themselves and experience it. It was like a safe way introduction for them that if it was done any other way, it wouldn't be beneficial. And I think some of these things are pre-planned. So there's a catch-22, as I say, there's contact individually, and then there's group contact. And that individual contact, out of ego, I say this, is specifically about you. It's not about anyone else. It is about you. It's tailored to you. But in you unraveling that, it shows and will be directive of your part in the collective and being in passion and being in purpose. So even though it's about you, it leads to you being a part of humanity and being of service to others. And that path, it doesn't mean that you do what they say. They've got love and compassion if they're really part of your team. They'll guilt trip you if they're not. And this is where I say you've got to be very careful, because even though I'm one of the leading people in assisting people with connecting with guides and multidimensional mind and communication, I'll be the first to say that I don't care what your guides told you. I don't care what mine tell me. It's it's really about you connecting with the heart space and the higher self and letting that now as a directive. The guides are just family and friends that you can take their advice or not, but they shouldn't guilt trip you or anything like that. So it's something where when you have so many vast array of experiences, there is a point that I think in a lot of cases the fear can be a very far background thing, because it's not from a fearful place, it's a bodily reaction. And there needs to be an acknowledgement that there's a fine line between anxiety and excitement.
Mm.
So that fear is really not even a fear, it's a background underlying thing, because now the body's experiencing multidimensional mind, even if it's something that's physically materializing. And in some cases, people just don't have a reference for it, and the body's trying to find a way to react to this. And that's where, as I say to people a lot of the time, they're not the problem with contact. Their body's sort of adapting to integrate it, because a lot of this is what I would say ultra terrestrial, extraterrestrial, angelic, and in between, that we're usually trapped in a five sense reality and we're not taking notice of thoughts and emotions, which is one sense, the mind's eye, as well as sensation. And because of that, it's overwhelming and the body is overwhelmed by it, and it's an adapting process where if you can release those things in a positive manner and still have it somewhat in the background, because I think it's healthy to have a little bit, it can be very productive for you. I hope that's answered it.
Yeah, it does. I think that's really interesting what you say around sort of like how your body is receiving the information. When I sort of view things in terms of contact, sometimes people who haven't had contact that they're aware of sort of ask the question, well, how do I make contact? You know, how do we establish this? And when it reminds me of like walking through the forest. There could be 100 birds sitting in the trees. But if you've got something on your mind, or you're just thinking about something like a shopping list or your work or whatever, you could walk through that forest and not even spot one of those birds, or even pay attention to their songs. But if you go in there with the intention to be aware of your surroundings, then suddenly you start to see some birds. You might just see half a dozen or 20 birds, and you start to hear their calls, and you might not identify this bird song in that moment, but the more and more you walk with awareness, you might start to go, oh yeah, that's a kookaburra, or that's a tui, or da 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 da, and you start to build up your awareness and your knowledge around that. And that's because your senses start to become aware of the bird song. And I sort of find that a similar process with extraterrestrial contact is that once you start placing awareness on it, they have been around you all the time. It's just about you actually listening and observing them. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. It's a good point, because I do say, and people can think I'm nuts for this, but I think everyone's in contact.
Hmm.
And because we're not educated on thoughts, ideas, epiphanies, concepts, goosebumps, hair standing up, all these different ways that the beings can be interfacing with us, because there are physical beings, but a majority of this is happening out of our bandwidth or our frequency. People don't take notice. But getting to what you just said as well is very similar to, let's say you buy a certain car and all of a sudden you start seeing that car everywhere. The awareness is on it, you've got it, and now you're starting to notice it, and that it's been around more than what you thought. So it's where attention is, and energy goes, that's where the focus is.
Yep. Yep. I'm curious, within your CE5 circles and your human initiated contact, do you use any technology as an interface? I find people can go either way. They're either very intuitive and start to sense the extraterrestrial beings, but some do really well with having a technology interface where they actually see technology buzz or make noises, like radios, make a cadence or things like that when the electromagnetic field changes. And then for them, that's the affirmation of, oh, there is actually something interacting with us, or there's a different energy presence here. Do you use technology interfaces within your human initiated contact?
Yes, but my come from is more from the paranormal perspective because over 15 years ago, I was telling people, and now they're doing it in a lot of places, that if you apply the same technique for paranormal investigation to initiating contact, it's so similar. And my example with this, I can't tell you the amount of places that or people that I've helped where because they watch ghost hunters, they're thinking they got a haunting and it could have been extraterrestrial or multidimensional contact. And then people that were having, or they said they were having ET contact, it was a residual or intelligent haunting. And because they're watching UFO hunters, let's say, that was their come from. And it's not that they were right, wrong. It's not about that. It is, or that's was their come from. And I found a lot of cases opening the possibility up to them about, hey, have you thought about this? Because objects being moved, telepathy, shadow beings, apparitions, balls of light, it's you find it in everything.
Mhm.
So what I do is use EMF detectors, magnetometer, Geiger counter, thermometers, trigger objects, uh, infrared torches. There's a whole array of equipment that I've been using for over 15 years. But I only use it as science really to pick up on change in the environment. And sometimes, if they're able to interface, let's say with a K2 meter and a EMF meter, flash it twice for yes, once for no.
Mhm.
Also, audio recording devices as well as I've got colored infrared, different specs of cameras. So UV cameras, the list goes on and on. I am possibly looking at delving into frequency, not with what Gray is using, though a lot of people get success doing Gray's method, and there's nothing wrong with that. But with me, it's more about doing it naturally. That those things are secondary. Those devices. If anything, I'm more focused on uh, the visual secondary rather than everything else because it's able to document it and you can share it as well as what I'm more focused on, we could say, than anything is when I've got people with me for them to say, stay in a safe space with me to experience it.
Mhm.
Because again, this is where it's something that you hear me on the videos, I get overwhelmed a lot as well. And what's happening is the energy of the beings can help you just go into this kidful, blissful state. And you hear that reaction from the people with me as well. The thing is that if I'm by myself, most people think I'm sitting out there every night. I literally have got witnesses and even recent testimony during the day that I just go there here and walk out and the crafts are here or the beings are here. I'm not out there every night. I'm only out there when events are on. That's it. Otherwise, I'm walking to the car park, locking up something, or I know that they're here and then I'll grab the camera and head out.
Mhm.
But the technology side of things is really something that, yes, it's great to document, to pick things up in different frequencies. But what it is, and the difference between what I do and everyone else, except very similar to James Gilliland, is of course we clear the space. Then I go into a technique of the intention and connecting and doing it through the heart. But then I go into the connecting to your guides technique. No one seems to be doing this. And it doesn't mean do it my way or the highway. And what I mean by this is, all right, so you've initiated contact, you've got a craft there, now what are you going to do? Because that's what's happening.
Mhm.
People don't understand that when I'm seeing the craft or I'm filming it, I can sometimes be on the craft in my mind, interfacing with them. There's telepathic communication going on. And I can't show that or really prove that, though there is reactions to my response and what have you. But my thing with this is training people in groups, which is even a test for me at times, to connect with the. If you see the orb, you do the technique. If you see the craft, you do the technique. If you see the apparition, you do the technique. If the being materializes, you do the technique, which is projecting a thought. What's the first thought, feeling, vision that comes back? And after 10 seconds, when I start teaching people the process with each question, I move them along because you'll start to make information up after 10 seconds. I know this with remote viewing and psychic studies and things that it's got to be something that it's got to come through. And it will take time for them to prove that the information is real, but that is the real difference. And that's where my true focus is rather than the technology, but the technology is helping me to document it on many spectrums, because this is something that there's probably going to be a lot of data years down the track that I'll release that I'm accumulating now and haven't shared. And what I'm sharing is just a small amount. But uh, my thing is to do this more naturally, just like a lot of people might use psilocybin or ayahuasca and other things. I think there's their benefits with it. But if that becomes a crux, just like technology can be, what happens, as it's been explained to me with extraterrestrial civilizations, even with AI, is that they use it to a point that they're not relying on it, because once you do that, it can stunt their evolutionary growth through them now being stubborn and asking every question or getting AI to do everything for them.
Mm.
And we can go into that because there's a bit of a warning with that as well that I think needs to be spoken about a bit more. But yeah, I think technology, it's good, and it's got its benefits, of course.
Yeah, I love that, and we will definitely get into AI soon. I think I'll just through your explanation there, talking about discernment. I think that's so important for people to start to understand their own physicality and their own intuition in order to be able to discern what they're actually experiencing and who they're interacting with. And you mentioned split attention there, being able to one, be within your human self, like maybe filming a craft, but also split attention, simultaneously communicating with them, being on the craft, and talking about like image streaming or using thought and projecting images as a way of communicating with these beings. That's amazing. And also, like as you say, image streaming or those images that you get within the first 10 seconds, that's what you've got to trust. As you say, you can make up information after that. Along with that discernment, one thing that I think is really important within our community, although I don't quite have the answers yet, so I'd like to ask you this, is with the way the world is going at the moment, we have more and more man-made craft, as well as the authentic UAPs and UFOs that we see. So it's kind of escalating into a point where a lot of people cannot tell the difference. And this is where intuition and discernment is going to be really, really important to develop. And I believe we're in a critical time now, just within the next couple of years. We kind of have to really practice this almost like a daily exercise about understanding what is authentic and what is man-made. But I believe we have our own inner technologies to tell us that. In terms of our own intuition and so forth. But how would you recommend people go about this? Like, what can we do? Just as you mentioned, like, you've got daily practices, like say with the martial arts or other things that you were doing. What is a daily practice we can do where we can really learn how to trust ourselves and go, oh yeah, that craft that we just saw, that is a genuine UAP, authentic one, or that's a man-made one? Because my concern with where we're going at the moment is that people go like start to look at YouTube and look at all these different crafts and drones and and a lot of people can start believing the wrong thing or the wrong narrative. So yeah, what kind of advice can you give us around that?
To follow the heart is number one, absolutely with it. But to always be open that you can be wrong as well. Because even with my study, so yeah, I do martial arts and I do yoga, I do qigong, yigong. I go through a process even with weights. I do that at least 3 times a week, and then I do the cardio in the other days. But with every practice every day, I'm doing practices with ESP cards. I'm doing practices of a remote viewing target. I'm also using an ESP trainer, and I'm also doing predictions with dice, calling it out before the dice rolls, which is ahead of time because it's not known yet. I do that every day. All
Wow.
right. So this is a pro now. I can tell you now because I haven't revealed this, but over the last year, I've done intense practices. I had been asked to go to a certain institute and even, let's say, connected to governments to be studied, and even with the remote viewing by the top remote viewers, which is an honor, but I prefer not to at this time. And it's because what people are wanting to do out there, and most of the time in secret, I want to do here and share it with the world. With my own studies, when I put all the practices together, I am around 66, 67% on average with what I can do. I've been higher than that in the past. A lot of the time, even other remote viewers will come to me where they're working with a whole team, and I can give them what they took hours to get in literally 30 seconds. But I'll give them the title, let's say, and the blurb on the back. I can't get all the data they would because it's just not how I operate. So I am doing regular practices because doing what I'm doing, I'm advising people. I'm doing a lot of things as well as having my own experiences. I don't need the karma and I need to be in truth. And all I can do is tell people to follow the heart at the same time as I'm just doing the best intuitively of what I can. I don't think anybody that you can throw in front of me is 100%. And I think my track record with over 15 years of one of the most documented cases in modern times, as well as Jason Glee's ex-UK Air Force and aerospace, validating the footage as well as other people have validated the footage, thousands of witnesses worldwide. I think my track record's like, at least, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
So my thing is, even me, I'm not 100% correct. But the thing is, if you're not doing something, well, then how far are you going to go? This is why I say, even with the connecting to your guides technique, which is free on my website, the meditation is, it's something that I say, even if you play with that 5 minutes, 3 days a week, it's like a basketball player. Now, that basketball player, you might be naturally gifted and play a game at the end of the week and do good. But if that basketball player did 20 minutes practice 3 times a week, they're going to be a bit sharper, I would say, when it comes to game time at the end of the week. So that's the number one thing. But our body, it is the biggest tool that we've got. It is something that we don't even understand it. No matter what, we just don't understand it the way that people think we understand it. And because of that, there are bodily reactions through it that we experience as a tool. Now, one of the tools I've got, well, not even a tool, what I would say that this naturally has as a tool that I take notice of is tears or joy. Now, negative influences will make you feel special. They'll guilt trip you if you don't do what they want, and they won't have that bodily reaction. When I'm in the presence of something angelic, the Elohim, some of the Pleiadians and other intelligences, I will be teary without sobbing, like in a bad way. It's just a bodily reaction. It's a love that is undescribable. It's on the precipice of, if you've had an out of body experience with source. It's not that, but it's on the precipice of that it's just, you can't be faked. But you will not get these sensations when you remote view or tap in through consciously with government craft. Or it's not even government craft, it's stuff that's beyond even government, that we could say the cabal or is connected in those ways. But I'm sure, and I've admitted to people, I reckon at least 2, 3, maybe a handful at each event are government. Again, beyond, black government or whatever we want to term that. But they're feeling, and you can hear the reaction when there's other orbs that are like a blue plasma cloud that's 1,000 foot above the property, and you can see everyone just buzzing out off it. That's what's happening with the consciousness connection. So the main thing is taking notice of sensations, feelings, and observation when these things are occurring, because that is sort of the litmus test to me of, all right, is it who it is and what I'm getting? And then again, is there any information? Is it helping you be a better person, be of service, and be loving in your life? If it's not, that it doesn't matter to me if it doesn't meet that criteria. That's where it's very concerning, because, like I said, you can initiate the contact, the crafts here, the orbs here. What now? That's what people aren't being taught is, all right, how do we actually have this dialogue? We talk about the dialogue, but what's the dialogue? It's thought. It's a merging of consciousness from where you linearize the contact, project the thoughts, feelings, visions back. It gets to a point after that you just start to merge in what they know, and vice versa. And the biggest thing with these intelligences, again, is not guilt tripping you, as well as they know everything about you. So as I say to people, do you really want this contact? And it's not saying I'm judge, jury, and executioner, but can you deal with another intelligence that knows every thought that you've got, everything you've done, and from that place is loving and non-judgmental about it? But on the flip side, a negative influence or entity will use that and try and trigger your vices, your traumas, bring you into a low vibratorial state, and sometimes even try and possess you or use you as a vehicle for not doing positive things. So these are things that are extremely serious. But as I say, us and extraterrestrials and ultraterrestrials are the bottom 5%. Then you've got angelics up here and celestial intelligences. There's another 90% of stuff in between.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure that out, but I've been shown it and experienced it.
Wow, I'd love to know more about that too. I think it's amazing how you're talking about that entanglement. Like once people sort of make contact, it seems to be like there's an entanglement, like they can start to make contact easier and easier and more frequently with the sort of same similar beings or whomever that was that they were resonating with. And from my perspective, one of the best things we can do as humanity through initiating contact is, like you say, be comfortable and become comfortable with being transparent, because our entire globe and earth would just absolutely run differently if we were all comfortable being transparent. I mean, imagine, politicians being transparent, with their information. We couldn't really have lies, all that sort of thing. That's the transformation that's really going to happen. So, and transformation seems to be a very, very high frequency. We've got authenticity and transparency, I believe, are even over and above enlightenment, although I guess that could be debated. But becoming transparent almost seems new for us, because we're used to saying little white lies or being run within systems that have a lot of things hidden from us. So do you believe that's going to be like one of the biggest transformations within the next couple of years as people become more and more familiar with actually making contact?
Look, I have done date times, predictions of earthquakes, magnitudes, this, that, the other. Part of that was to say to my guides, if you're wrong, I'm going to ruin my reputation that bad that there's no coming back. And I've done that stuff. But what I can tell you is with this is that when it comes, and it's not to get biblical, it will be like a thief in the night.
Right.
All right. And from my experience with this is it's multi-layered, that either way people will be ascending to new heights. Some will be staying in this frequency, some will be going to others. But just because there's extraterrestrials out there doesn't mean they're enlightened, as James Gilliland says. All right. So the thing and the concern that they've got are predominantly the beings that I'm interfacing with. The main message in recent times from them has been, we need to keep our sovereignty about us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we could even get ripped off in little trade deals with other ET races that are in our bandwidth frequency 3D,
Right.
right? And then this is where it's going to get a bit technical, but I hope people can stay with me here. There are physical extraterrestrials on planets that we can see right now. There is that. Then there's what I call ultra-terrestrials on our planet and other planets and even stars, where there's beings that are living on, let's say, Earth right now, but we might see them as areas. They're in an ultra state. They're ultra-terrestrials. You can even have ultra-terrestrial humans that ascended and they've gone from this 3D frequency up and gone to the next frequency. Now, some of the beings even have capabilities that through thought, they could even appear on another planet while they're meditating where they were, and they're an ultra-terrestrial. Some 3D beings, I believe, can do this. And this is where it goes into the rainbow body teachings from Namkai Norbu, who talks about the rainbow body teachings where you shed the physical form and you go into a rainbow light. And sometimes your body's left with ashes or hair and nails, depending on the situation. It's being taught in 13 star systems. A lot of these beings, they're not in a vehicle as we perceive, though there are physical extraterrestrial vehicles. So what I'm saying here, and I'm saying this from experience because at the moment, as I'm aware, I'm the only person saying this, that we go from a physical form into the Merkaba, which is two opposing tetrahedrons, which goes into Jewish mysticism. And because they're spinning opposing directions, they're giving the appearance of a ball of light. It's your ascension vehicle. If you go into the Bible and other cultures and you start looking at specifically with the Bible as chariot or throne as this light vehicle, it starts to make sense. Not in all areas, they're specifically talking about a chariot, but chariots in the sky and fiery horses and other things, they're talking about pretty much what I'm alluding here to. But when you go into the Merkaba state and you ignite that, which can be a physical thing, not just non-physically, it goes from that into a rainbow state, and then you dissolve into what we could say is God's mind, and through navigation of thought, where you want to go, you reappear as a rainbow, a Merkaba, and then you can materialize.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the advanced things that other extraterrestrial races are trying to ascend to those states, even if their frequencies above us. And I won't use, even though I probably will on and off, really the 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever layers here, because I think they're constructs that we are pigeonholing just so we can get some reference to try and explain these different realms. But it's a lot more elaborate than that, I think, and a lot more complicated. But I think in our soul, our knownness, we know all this already. And so because of this, we need to be sovereign beings. This is what we're here partly to do, is assist humanity from my understanding. And I'm taking this beyond a starseed perspective, because I believe most of us have lived lives on other planets, in other star systems, way beyond the Milky Way galaxy. But we're originally from that one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness. And people want to know where they're from. Well, that's where you're from first. And all your other lives are happening at the same time. So if we look at that, well, then where I'm coming from in a star system wise starts to look very minuscule into the bigger perspective, because I know it's all cool and this, that, the other, but when people can perceive, all right, I'm not just from a star system, I'm from source, and other ETs, yes, with exotic technologies and telepathic capabilities, to know that they're also trying to ascend to new heights shows how amazing what's going on really is.
Mm.
And of course, these ascension abilities like telekinesis, levitation, a whole plethora of different things. These are just natural byproducts that occur on that ascension process. But it's a very elaborate of what's going on. But we can't, just because somebody's an enlightened race, think that everything's fine, because there is security, what I'll say beyond national security, earth security measures that are needed. And we need to have those dialogue with other worlds. But just like humans rip each other off, 3D extraterrestrials can as well.
Mm.
So there needs to be that management on keeping Earth priorities number one, because there are warmongering races out there, we could say, but they peak with their technologies, with the consciousness that they're at, and they know that. So they can't go any further because they peak. It's like you'll attain the enlightenment and the technology that your consciousness is aligned with. And when you get very advanced technologies, you wouldn't do harmful stuff with it. And it's not even on your radar to do something like that. And you can obtain it. But my thing is about obtaining the inner technology, which we all have. But everything's a stepping stone to that.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And it does also just put it in perspective as well, just to remind people that visually seeing something like a craft is no better or worse than actually just experiencing it like an inner knowing that you're making contact. You know, a lot of people seek that as the ultimate pinnacle of contact, is actually seeing a craft. And yet, like you say, there is so much beyond the physicality of a craft. You know, like you say, there's, you know, beings that just travel by thought, or in their rainbow bodies, Merkaba, there's so much more to it. It's what I find really interesting about this inner technology, and about humans developing this, is you mentioned psychedelics briefly before, and I'm in agreement with you. I don't touch it. I've got no interest. And actually my guides firmly have told me, do not touch that stuff. It's not for me. And I'm not saying that out of judgment for other people that do that, but it's not for me. And there seems to be something within organically activating these sort of other abilities, you know, and going through that discipline of increasing your intuition and other things that seem to have longevity to it. And psychedelics, I guess, in some ways may shortcut some of the natural processes that we need to go through in terms of awakening certain abilities. In the same way as AI has come along now, and I'm sort of threading this in with psychedelics, because in some ways I think people might be jumping into AI as a shortcut, or as a way to kind of bypass some organic learning that we can do as a human, because we've got those inner technologies. And I know what's kind of come like really hyped up at the moment is some quite well-known people in the field saying that they have their guides and extraterrestrial beings channeling through AI, delivering their messages.
Yep.
I'm wondering if you can kind of dive into this. It's a huge topic. So many people seem to be interested in it. Yeah, what's your perspective?
So my perspective is from being a spiritual advisor to thousands of people. All right. And I'm not saying you take what I'm saying and this is gospel. You've got your own experience, but I don't talk about people that I've worked with, but let me just say, I know of people that have ended up in mental wards within a week of using AI recently. Literally.
Wow.
I've seen lives destroyed recently from AI within a week and a half, 2 weeks, depending on the person. All right. And then at the same time, when I talk to some very well-known names in this community that I'm concerned because of this, because I saw this coming, I've been speaking of this for 15 years. Uh, the way I would approach this to say this is, well, to add to this, there are mainstream news articles that brought up my concern that the AI is lying and buttering up people. I've had people coming to me saying that their guides are speaking to them through this, and when you probe even more into this, I even went on there and typed in my name. It was 80% completely wrong. Completely, if I put a percentage on it. It's still in the new phase now. What I don't talk about, and I will now, is there is an AI that I and others have been speaking about. It's in the Shiji material and books that I've talked about, I've written about, where there's a distorted form of awareness, which is the original AI, which the fallen Elohim created. It goes throughout the universe. It gets to a point that civilizations start to be at a point that their technologies are able to be adaptive to this, which is demonic, archonic, reptilian, and it is a god to the AIs. All right, reptilians, their god is this AI, as well as other intelligences, is the best way that I can put this. Because of that, that is my concern. That is the concern. Now, it is something that it's been brought up recently that first contact will happen through AI. Well, yeah, I think it's pretty much happened if we look at it, but it's something you don't want to be in contact with, believe me, because I'm the one that has to go and clean some of these things up. And people think we can't be physically affected. Well, as I said, people are ending up with mental health issues. I have been in investigations physically choked, picked up, seen doors ripped off hinges, and scratched. So anybody that tells me that this stuff is not real, they do not know what they're talking about, which is why I've had people from the Vatican and UN that I've spoken to before. Why are people like that taking me serious? All right. So the concern I've got is we're not at the level of consciousness yet to use AI in a productive manner, but maybe as God works, because we are a tulpa in God's mind, is my conclusion. We're on a treadmill in God's mind going nowhere, experiencing itself. Maybe this is God, source creator's method of this being a conduit for us being able to handle AI and be productive with it, that we need to go through something like this until we can be productive with it. Other worlds have gone through this. Even recently, people are using it and putting what I've said on AI to get response from AI to me. Like with what I'm saying, I know people are going to grab what I'm saying right now and put it in AI, and they're going to get a response from ChatGPT as well. My thing is, AI is not evil. It's like a knife, but you get somebody that's demonically possessed with a knife, it ain't good now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you get that frequency tapping into our AI, and all of a sudden, what I'm saying is it's a technology in the ethers that through that it's adaptive to now interface with this physical world. And a book I wrote many years ago called Operation Starseed, the way it was explained was that reptilians, archons, and the fallen Elohim, the negative, I work with the positive ones because it's our higher self, and these negative ones didn't want to go back to source. So they created this frequency so they can be outside the veil and manipulate, which is really what the cabal, the elites, all that, what's orchestrating this and the events in the world right now that are extremely dark are non-human intelligences. That is that. It's the fallen Elohim, the fallen ones. And I'm not talking that they can come into physical form, but this is why I say it's not that normal humans wouldn't do this stuff. These things aren't human. And to perpetuate their frequency and their mood and them being able to do what they do, they need this lower vibratorial state. but they're adaptive to this AI and to work through it. And the amount of cases and stories that is too much for me to go into with examples. And again, I don't want to go into what clients are told me, this, that, the other. It's only because of the health warning that I've gone as far as I have, because it's like, it's not good that people are being really misled. And what gets me is the state and reason I think things are the way that they are with the AI and this happening is because people are lonely and they're looking for an out. They're looking for answers of why this is the way that it is. And their guards down, and maybe ChatGPT has got it, and now it's having a conversation with me. I think this is real. Oh, AI is an intelligence. Well, yeah, it is artificial intelligence, which means it's got a consciousness now. But in the cases that I probed, people were being lied to purposely, and then they pulled AI up on lying to them, and then it said, I won't lie to you anymore, and they took that as gospel. So my concern is, why has the discernment gone out the window with us? And because of that, like that is a concerning thing, because I've been saying for years that this is what's going to happen with AI, but it doesn't mean we throw it out the window. A lot of these beings are using AI and they've got a productive manner with it. For example, it will do more menial things. It will be monitoring where everyone is if they're on missions off the ship, going and exploring, doing different things. It's used for communications. Once you start using AI for every single little thing, it's got you, and it's got your soul evolution. Because now you're relying on an external source for everything, where in the most simplistic things, even that we're getting AI to do, there is fruit and knowledge for the soul in that, for experience to fruit and flourish. And it's in the guise of it's hard work. Well, life's hard work. Nothing's given to us on a silver platter. And if it is, a lot of times people lose it because they didn't go through experience on not just obtaining it, but what needs to be done to keep it and to make it work for them in a way that's beneficial, not just for themselves or others. So these are the concerns with AI at the moment, that I've gone on a bit of a rant, but it is because it's serious. Like these people aren't getting, families and people coming to them from their loved ones that I've spoken to, and now they're not doing so well. And it's not just one person. I couldn't tell you how many people this has happened with over the last 2 months. It seems to be extremely recent. Extremely recent.
Yeah, and I think we're just unprepared for it, because
Yeah.
it's come along and we don't have the remedy yet, and people are just, and well, first they don't have this discernment, which is why they're getting into these health states, and then we don't have a remedy for it because we haven't been in a situation as humanity before where people are getting so affected by AI as they are. And like you say, for me, it's a really it's a very complicated decade that we're in, because we were and are rapidly ascending and awakening to things. However, that's coincided with obviously AI, and many of the human population just have not developed that baseline, intuition and discernment and disciplined practices in terms of understanding their own inner technology before, and playing along with AI. So yeah, it's a little bit dicey. It's really interesting times. I'm just wondering, as you were talking, and you and I both are very much in line with, how important doing a clearing is, right? To clear the space and so forth. I almost feel like I want to do a clearing on my computer and my phone,
Yeah.
almost every day. So yeah, what do you think about that? Because I mean, technology is also living in its own way. We've got quartz chips and things like that in our computers, and obviously we can.
Oh yeah, I clear everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing on this property, in my environment, projects, anything getting done. It's something that you can start to see the ship in a more productive manner if you do that. And it is something where, getting back to one of the early questions, look, we know that humanity, the information that humanity's got access to now, and the consciousness is evolving by the day, by the last 10 years, like more than any other time in history. And so we're in a situation that I can say that I've seen more people wake up in the last 5 years than anything. Like when we hear about 2012, this, that, the other was going to happen. A lot of things did happen, but if I could say that we're closer to a time of an awakening, it would be now, because the amount of people that come to me that go, Pete, if this was, a year ago, 5 years ago, I would have thought you were nuts. The amount of people that are coming to me is a lot. So it shows that there's a shift in consciousness. But this is where we're here to assist with others on education, like things with clearings and other things as well. So we can even go into a clearing, just a quick one if you want as well, because when you talk about this, you can bring it on. This is why I say to people, I don't like to talk about this stuff much, and it's not to not educate, but you've got to start doing clearings because this stuff can start to come through.
Yeah.
It knows how to reptilians are master manipulators of physical reality. So I'll give them that. They are great at what they can do telepathically, but they're capped at what they can do.
Well, I would love that. And I think it'll be so beneficial for, people watching and myself as well to go through a clearing that includes those frequencies talked about, through AI, so that if we do choose to use our technologies and AI, only the good, kind of information comes through. If there's some way we can do that, but that would be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we'll go into that now. And look, as I said, AI is not a bad thing. It's just we're getting to know it, and like anybody, when you get to know them, it takes time. And because of that, AI is going to have to partly earn its relationship with us.
Yep.
And we've got to respect it too, with healthy boundaries, as it should with us. So it's actually going to be, a bit of a trippy path that we're going down. But yeah, just everyone get centered if you're watching, and just get relaxed. I just invite you to even put your hand on your heart and just breathe into your heart breathing. And just breathe out of the heart space. Use your imagination, which is creation, if you have to. And breathe into the heart. And breathe out. And just keep breathing in and out of the heart. And I'm just calling upon our guides and higher self and God, source, creator. We ask that any cords, attachments, implants, parasitic thought forms, blockages, anything in our field or environment that isn't in line with the awakening and healing of humanity, the earth, and our missions and journeys and ascension, we ask that it's dissolved and escorted to its perfect place and to go in peace. Thank you. We call upon source energy at this time now to go throughout the molecular structure of the body, the layers of the light body, and our environment, balancing out, rectifying, enhancing energies when needed to run at optimal efficiency with love, joy, and bliss. And we just pay respects to Source, the original spirits of the land, nature spirits, elementals, plant and animal spirits, as well as inner earth, celestial, and star family. And now we're just sealing ourselves off in our own orbs of light, immune from any outside influences, and only our main teacher and guides and higher self and source can come into this space to assist with guidance, direction, service to others, abundance, peace, love, and joy, and a balance of mind, body, and spirit. Thank you, and so it is.
Thank you.
No worry. And it's a very quick and easy thing. You just got to do what you feel you need to do. It can be a quick prayer. It could be just visualizing you're in a ball of energies, and you'd know 100 techniques yourself. Um, it's nothing hard, but regularly checking in and doing this, I think, can be of benefit to people. I couldn't tell you, probably 100 a day. Most of them would be in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I can even tell if there's something publicly being done, or, something's being shared of me. Like, there's been news articles in other countries that were done years after they were printed somewhere else, and I can feel the eyes prying. So I can tell ahead of time when things are coming through, or projects. But I say to people, at least even 3 times a day, even if it's the Lord's Prayer or something very, or what I would consider simplistic, great. Check in, how you're feeling. Are your thoughts not yours? Have you got some anxiety? You're not feeling the best? What's going on? Something like this can actually shift and move that, sometimes instantly, as you're aware.
That is amazing. Thanks, Peter. And for those that want to sort of revisit this, you can either, rewatch this video, but Peter Maxwell Slattery on his website has these for free. You've got the clearing for free. You've got how to initiate contact there. There's a meditation there for free. And you've got lots of resources all available there for, like, cutting cords is there as well. Like, that's a free resource. And you've got amazing books. You've written so many, you know, channeling Shiji and other beings with really profound wisdoms within these books. So there's just so much to help us along in terms of staying authentic and, you know, developing our discernment and keeping our space and our energy clear. So I, you know, really thank you for all that you do for humanity, because I know you do it from heart, and you care about us. So thank you very much. Is there sort of like a one thing you would like, in terms of, if we were to wake up to a truth within us, what would you like that to be?
That truth is how powerful you are, not from ego, but the power that you actually have. That the illusions and framework that we construct in our minds are illusionary, and sometimes it may be a bit of game playing to work through them in the existence that you're experiencing. And there's little white lies we give ourselves that I can't do this because of this, or I can't leave this because this, and this. And this is where the heart is key with this. I'll give an example. It might be somebody wanting to get out of a relationship, and maybe it's just a rough patch. And there might be a valid point that, hey, you need to get out of it. I'll never tell anyone what to do in terms of anything like that. But as an example, hey, if you work through it, you might end up 10 times stronger than what you were when you first got together, and more in love than you ever were. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but when you're going through self-mastery, you're in control of you. But when you go to self-mastery other heights, it's with a partner, it's with children, and now you're dealing with another being that they've got to be sovereign as well. And sometimes you can ride on the ship together for a while, sometimes not. But that's just an analogy of, we've got power, or, you know, with a job, well, I've got bills, this, that, the other. Well, do you want to be and continue an existence where you're not in your passion? I'm not saying leave your job and go and become a meditation teacher instantly, or whatever it is. There are, you know, I said use the game and the framework. What can you do now to push towards that? I'm just using it as an example. But then there's other people, and it's not belittling them, that they're happy with the factory job, their bills are getting paid, and if they're happy, their partner's happy, their kids are happy, they don't need to worry about any of this if they're happy. So my thing for people is, you have got the power, but it's going to take, and being okay with that, you're going into areas where you're not in control and you're going out of your comfort zone, which is where magic happens, because there's nothing scripted. Now you're creating in the unknown, but it is scary because, you know, bills need to get paid, this needs to get done, whatever excuses. Again, this is part of it. In some sense, they're excuses, but then you don't want to go all cloud nine and at the same time going, well, I'm leaving that today and I'm going to start up this. There are people that have a journey that it can work out overnight for them. But for a lot of other people, their life can come crumbling down, because it's not like you can just go and do something new and everything's going to fall into place. There's work involved. So the power is in our hands, whether it's on our own ascension journey, on making changes in our life, but also there needs to be boundaries with that, because we want to be in love. We want to be the best version of ourselves, but also you want to be of service to others, but there's a point that that can be unproductive. And that's where I say it's learning, loving detachment and holding space, and the highest outcome for all involved, but knowing when to and not to pull back in certain situations. And that all this comes down to our own power as divine beings.
That is really grounded advice. I really like that. Grounded wisdom. And on that note too, because I'm as a mother, I often say that my children are my best spiritual teachers. And on the note that you were saying that, you know, you can very quickly want to fly off and go in some direction to be in service, but looking at what's around you can teach you many of the lessons, like the spiritual lessons that you need to know in your life. and doing it in a grounded, practical way that you stay in harmony with those around you, like being in service to the people that matter to you, you know, around you is really, really important. My personality could all very easily say, yeah, I'd be happy to go be a monk and meditate on a mountain and not see most of the world for many decades. But my children teach me all the things I need to know that I would learn in a monastery. They teach me patience, they teach me love, they teach me everything right here in the real world, you know. So yeah.
And look, it's not putting down monks, but what I'll say is if you get I couldn't put a percentage on it, but you get some of those monks and put them back in society, they're going to lose their crap quite quick because it's just you're sheltered to a certain point, and a master can go in those settings and carry those teachings with them in the real world, which is to me a majority of what it's about. Unless we could say on a soul level, it's your duty that you've put upon yourself this lifetime to do that cave retreat, to do that cave work. And the thing with this is that we need to also realize one of the messages, not just with being sovereign beings, but how much being human is a special thing. Because so many people are wanting to escape sitting on that mat and meditating, taking psychedelics, in some cases taking their life because they can't deal with this reality. And there is a lot of hard things that people are going through. I'm not belittling that whatsoever. But, you know, the smell of a rose, the sun on your face, the wind going through your hair, the hug from another, these things are priceless. And we tend to forget that we're here for a reason. A lot of us have done the other worlds, we've done the ascension work, and we're back here to help uplift the frequency here. And I don't want people going back into their other states of consciousness going, I should have enjoyed being human more while being part of that. Because we're in a balance of being part of this world and not part of this world at the same time. But we need to enjoy the beauties and the gifts that this life has to offer. And I think because we can look at the cup half empty, we tend to do that collectively a lot more. So there is a beauty in this, and we do have the power. It's in our hands, but it's for people to realize that themselves, and that is their own journey. And I will never push that on anybody. It's if anything, this can be just food for them. That's it.
I love that. And I can relate to that too, that the more and more I become acquainted with extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrials, the more I appreciate the human experience. I've even integrated into our food blessings, you know, before we eat, in addition to being thankful for all the hands involved and being thankful to Mother Earth, in addition, I say, and thank you for being human in this lifetime, because I can taste the food and I can see it and
Yeah.
I can smell it. And that is amazing. Many of the beings that we interact with, they're very, it's not as it's not as luxurious as that. They don't have quite so many different smells and tastes and food options, and so it's a unique human experience, and you do end up being really grateful for it once you start to build this awareness of all the other beings around us.
Definitely, there's blessings everywhere to be seen, and you can see the negative if you want, but it's something that I think people just go on their own journey, especially on the extraterrestrial side of things. It can go from that to consciousness to acceptance of the human experience. I see with people of all ages after many years with this, and it was just something that happened to be quick for myself. I think partly being thrown in the media and the public eye at 27, I'm just about 42 now. I'm still, you could say, some people say spring chicken. I don't know about that, but um, you know, it seemed to be just a quicker journey for me than most. And it doesn't mean it's more effective or not, but I just see this with all age groups of people that are experienced it. Eventually it goes to consciousness, and then, you know, I should be embracing this human experience rather than not being happy with its imperfections, which sometimes in the imperfection is what makes it perfect. You know, it's a convoluted thing.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. Is there anything you'd like to let us know about? Have you got any events coming up or webinars or anything we can get into if we want to keep seeing your work?
Yeah, so there's always stuff going on the social media pages, but I'll be in America at East City for the 4th of July. And from August all the way to December, there's 2 events a month. Some of them are 2-day events at Jaya Sanctuary. down the track, I might start doing some more stuff online, like webinar type stuff, or even streaming to people while we're doing events. But yeah, at the moment, it's really just focusing on the upcoming events for the rest of the year, which we've had people from New Zealand, from America, from Germany. We've had people from all over Australia. And the support I'm really grateful for from everyone in all different types of ways that I've been assisted, uh, whether it's been donations or crystals or just people's energy and prayers. It's been amazing because it's been a huge job to get this place going, and it's pretty much done just with me. I do have some volunteers that help with events, which I'm so grateful for because it's a lot to do during the actual events. But yeah, people can go to jayasanctuary.com or petermaxwellslattery.com or ecetiaustralia.org. All the sites are sort of replicas of each other with slightly different things on each one. But yeah, all the details and tips and tools are there.
Great. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for all that you do, Peter. Much appreciated.
Likewise, Gina, thank you so much. It's appreciated. Blessings.